The first inkling of doom arrived quietly, almost imperceptibly. Small tremors rippled through the Pacific Rim, unnoticed by most and dismissed as routine tectonic shivers. Yet beneath the coastal cities, a subterranean beast stirred, heaving with malevolent purpose. In the skies above, satellites began to blink erratically. Their sensors flagged anomalies in Earth's magnetosphere. Astronomers gazed into telescopes and noted a crimson flare emanating from the sun's surface, unlike any flare recorded in human history. 1. The scientist's warning. Dr. Elara Nimitz peered at the data streams cascading across her monitors, a frown creasing her brow. For years, she'd have been tracking solar activity, predicting that the sun's magnetic cycles would crescendo in a cataclysmic event. 2. Political chess and broken promises. In the halls of power, governments bickered over dwindling resources and shifting alliances. The Great Arctic Coalition blamed the Southern Meridian Pact for rampant piracy in the Atlantic shipping lanes, while the Eurasian Union flexed its military might along contested borders. The United Nations convened a summit in Geneva, but instead of crafting a unified response to environmental collapse, delegates quarreled over trade tariffs, migration quotas, and territorial disputes. President Rafael Torres of the Western Federation accused his counterparts of ignoring the looming solar flare, insisting that diverting funds toward defense systems was a frivolous expense. It was myopic, he said, to prepare for a crisis that could never come. Meanwhile, Chancellor Mai Lin-cheng of the Eastern Continental Republic argued that scientific models were flawed, that the sun's flares were merely cyclical anomalies. As diplomats traded barbs in conference rooms, phone lines crackled with protest from populations who trusted neither side. 3. The whispered omens. Elsewhere, in remote corners of the world, ancient traditions whispered of the world's end. Shamans in the Andes spoke of ceaseless rain turning the skies to rivers, drowning mountaintops under relentless torrents. In the Sahara, desert tribes recited prophecies of a crimson storm that would blot out the sun, leaving the sands aflame. Across the Pacific, island elders told tales of Leviathan waves rising to swallow their villages, and fishermen saw unusual swarms of jellyfish along coral reefs, as if nature itself was rebelling. In northern Siberia, reindeer herders observed how ice on sacred lakes refused to settle, shifting like molten silver under a sky that never felt quite right. These omens reached the ears of journalists in Moscow and Beijing, and soon frontline reports chronicled freak weather events. Tornadoes swirling over the Amazon, heat waves scorching the Gobi, waters boiling in the Ganges Delta. The world was fracturing beneath its own feet. Section 2. Escalation of Shadows 4. The First Strike. It began with auroras dancing at latitudes never before recorded, shimmering violet and green across skies above tropical rainforests and equatorial seas. Night fell, and cities across the globe lit up with marveling crowds. But that wonder turned to terror when, moments later, a blinding flash raced across the firmament, and the earth convulsed. A colossal solar storm, far beyond any known scale, unleashed a torrent of charged particles that ravaged power grids. In New York, the entire city was plunged into darkness as substation transformers exploded in sparks and flame. In Tokyo, the newly installed bullet trains ground to a halt, their braking systems fried by electromagnetic interference. In Sao Paulo, the hydroelectric dams shut down as sensors melted, flooding control rooms under torrents of water. Emergency sirens wailed in every metropolis as governments scrambled to assess the damage. Nations enacted martial law, deploying troops to maintain order in panic-stricken streets. Riots erupted as looters descended on grocery stores. Hospitals braced for the influx of injured, and pharmacies ran dry within hours. The United Nations Emergency Council declared a global state of emergency, but their pleas for calm went unheard in the fog of hysteria. 5. Fractured alliances. Amidst the anarchy, old rivalries flared anew. The Western Federation accused the Eurasian Union of sabotaging their energy facilities, claiming cyberattacks had crippled their grid even before the solar storm struck. In retaliation, New Prussia sealed off its borders, severing supply routes into war-torn Eastern Europe. The Southern Meridian Pact withdrew from the Arctic Coalition, denouncing their former allies as weak and indecisive. In the vacuum of leadership, warlords and paramilitary groups seized control. In East Africa, the Horn militants carved out a territory in Somaliland, extorting food shipments bound for Ethiopia. In South America, the Andes cartel commandeered hydrocarbon reserves in Patagonia, trading fuel for slaves. Meanwhile, the world's superpowers prepared for the worst. The United States mobilized its nuclear arsenal, placing missiles on high alert, while Russia deployed mobile ICBMs across Siberia. China flooded its energy grids with coal-fired power, resurrecting smog-choked skies, and India, desperate, scrambled to secure water reservoirs as monsoon patterns veered off course. The delicate web of peace unraveled, and humanity seemed poised on the brink of self-annihilation, even before nature could claim its due. 6. The broken sky. Yet, in the eye of the storm, a new threat emerged. The sun's hyperactivity had torn holes in the magnetosphere, allowing streams of cosmic radiation to cascade upon the Earth. Strange auroras rippled across the sky like bloodstains, and the air itself felt electrified. Birds fell from the sky in droves, their feathers singed by invisible flames. Plants withered, their chlorophyll oxidized by unseen rays, turning fields into charred wastelands. Then came the rains, acidic, acrid, clouds thick with sulfuric compounds that scoured every surface they touched. In North America, the Mississippi Delta became a quagmire of acidic mud. In Europe, the Po Valley's vineyards were reduced to skeletal vines. Livestock perished. Crops failed in fields once fertile. Rivers boiled under the relentless heat. People huddled in basements, clutching cloths soaked in vinegar to filter the burning air. Governments pleaded for international aid, but with communication networks down and infrastructure shattered, help was slow to arrive. Desperation bred cruelty. In refugee camps, gangs roamed, harvesting organs for black markets, trading clean water for bullets. Section II. Descent into darkness. 7. The relentless winter. From the ashes of the broken sky, a winter descended. Clouds thick with soot from burning cities and ash from blazing forests obscured the sun entirely. Temperatures plummeted. The world was bathed in an unending twilight. Springs froze before they could bloom. Seas turned brackish and began to slumber under sheets of slush. In the Arctic, ice advanced toward tundra where none had been seen in centuries. The Great Barrier Reef lay dead, a skeletal testament to a seasick planet. Humanity retreated into subterranean bunkers, ancient caverns, and hastily dug foxholes. Tunnels beneath Tokyo echoed with the murmurs of survivors trading stories of the life above in hushed reverence. Beneath the Sahara, Bedouin nomads sought refuge in deep Kanat systems, gathering around subterranean fires, telling tales of sandstorms so fierce they howled like maelstroms. In Germany, an abandoned subway station became a makeshift hospital, its corridors lined with frostbitten patients fighting off infection without antibiotics. The world's great cities had become crypts of memory. 8. Waning humanity. As months dragged into years, the fabric of civilization unraveled further. Language began to fragment as communities isolated, evolving dialects that were incomprehensible to outsiders. Schools ceased. Children learned to fend for themselves, trading stories and barterable skills instead of algebra and literature. Art and culture, once vibrant, dwindled to scavenger tales and whispered legends of a sunlit world. Factions formed around any semblance of power. The Brotherhood of the Aurora, a cult preaching that the sun's curse was divine retribution, gathered adherents in caves beneath the Rockies, chanting in broken tongues. The Children of the Deep, survivors dwelling in flooded coastal tunnels, preached salvation beneath the waves, believing that humanity's future lay in aquatic evolution. The Iron Hand, a ruthless militia led by Colonel Lars Hennig, claimed dominion over the Ruhr, enforcing a regime of brutal scarcity where oxygen was rationed and dissent equaled death. Amidst the chaos, pockets of resistance flickered. Dr. Elara Nimitz, refusing to accept death as inevitable, led a ragtag group of engineers and scientists in the Antarctic Research Station. They scavenged parts from fallen satellites and jury-rigged solar collectors in the hopes of reigniting a semblance of power. Their beacon, a feeble glow in the endless night, became a symbol of hope. From distant corners, survivors trudged through blizzards to reach her, clutching tattered maps and letters sealed in wax, believing that Frosthaven might still hold salvation. Section IV. Echoes of Extinction 9. The Final Exodus. 10 years after the first tremors, the last havens of humanity lay scattered amid ruins. A Dutch enclave in the flooded polders of North Holland built windmills that creaked under gale-force winds. They harvested kelp from the North Sea for sustenance. In Patagonia, a settlement clustered around geothermal vents, forging alloys from scavenged metals to build makeshift greenhouses. Yet no refuge was safe. The Earth's core had begun to churn erratically, sending violent tremors across fault lines. Volcanoes that had once slumbered for millennia erupted, spewing ash that darkened skies for weeks. The southern hemisphere fared slightly better, but the onslaught was inevitable. Even the Amazon, a verdant jungle that had withstood millennia, collapsed under an invasion of mutant fungi and piercing storms. As the world grew smaller, survivors made the exodus toward the poles. Elara's beacon in Antarctica became a siren call for the weary and broken. Her team, now a crust of hardened scientists, prepped their station for the influx of refugees, converting research labs into dormitories, laboratories into communal kitchens, and genetic sequencers into forges for prototyping sustainable food sources. 10. Last stand at Frosthaven. The Antarctic continent, once a desolate expanse of ice, had become the final bastion. Beneath the ice sheets, steam vents carved out caverns that pulsed with geothermal warmth. Inside these caverns, a sprawling complex of tunnels stretched for miles, illuminated by solar arrays that captured pale daylight reflected off thick ice. The station, renamed Frosthaven, housed 1,000 souls, scientists, engineers, farmers, and dreamers who believed in a future beyond oblivion. But Frosthaven's reprieve was not eternal. In the sky above, the sun unleashed one final superflare, a cataclysmic outburst that had been brewing for centuries. The blast tore through the weakened magnetosphere, striking the Earth with such ferocity that it shook the planet's crust. Earthquakes racked the ice sheets, fissures opened, swallowing parts of the base in a cacophony of ice and stone. Power grids failed, leaving Frosthaven in darkness for the first time in a decade. Desperation gripped the inhabitants as oxygen generators sputtered and water purifiers froze, leaving the community to ration every drop of drinkable water. 11. The final light. In the dim corridors, Dr. Elara Nimitz gathered the survivors in the central chamber, a dome of reinforced titanium beneath the ice. Around her, faces glowed in the light of emergency lamps, eyes reflecting the resignation of those who knew that this was the end. There would be no salvation, no raft to carry them beyond oblivion. In her hand, Elara held a small crystal, a repository of human knowledge, data etched into diamond-hard layers. It was their legacy, a final testament to a species that had reached for the stars and fallen. As the radiation levels rose beyond lethal thresholds, a hush fell over the room. They took turns speaking, voices trembling. A farmer from Patagonia recounted memories of golden fields. A musician from Mumbai hummed a lullaby that once comforted millions. An engineer from Berlin whispered the equations that had built this fragile world. One by one, they placed their hands on the crystal, imprinting their essence upon it. Data, DNA, recordings of laughter and tears. Section V. Epilogue. Whispers beyond the void. 14. A crystal in the cosmos. In the aftermath, the sun cast a barren glow upon a ravaged earth. The oceans, once teeming with life, lay poisoned and still. The skies, once vibrant with birdsong and clouds, were a canvas of perpetual twilight. Yet amid the ruins, the crystal lay intact, buried beneath layers of ice and stone. Its facets caught the pale light, refracting a spectrum that danced like phantom auroras. Centuries later, a vessel from a distant star system arrived, drawn by the faint beacon that emanated from Frosthaven's location. Its sensors detected the anomaly, a crystalline structure radiating a complex sequence of signals, music, language, mathematics. The explorers, beings of unimaginable curiosity, excavated the crystal and deciphered its code. Through it, they learned of humanity's ascent and fall, of dreams that soared beyond the clouds and fears that consumed them. They listened to the lullabies and hymns, to the equations that once powered cities, and to the final prayers whispered in the hush of annihilation. 15. Lessons carved in light. On their homeworld, the crystal's story spread, a sobering testament to the perils of arrogance and disregard for nature's delicate balance. Scholars studied the rise of industrial might and ecological collapse. Artists painted scenes of supernova sunsets and frozen wastelands. Philosophers debated the morality of creation and destruction. Humanity's memory became a cautionary tale, woven into the cultural fabric of alien societies that vowed never to tread the same path. And so, in the cold expanse of space, life found a way to endure. The crystal, a fragment of a vanished world, carried within it the heartbeat of a species that reached toward the stars and fell, reminding all who gazed upon it that the cosmos was both cradle and grave. In its rippling patterns of light, the future saw a promise, that in remembering the end, they might guard against it. 16. The remembered sun. I remember the sun not as a distant star, but as a living presence, its warmth a tender caress on my skin during childhood afternoons. I ran through golden fields of wheat in Kansas, light scattering like diamonds across rippling stalks. My grandmother's voice sang old hymns as she rocked in her chair, her silhouette bathed in amber glow. At night, we watched fireflies swirl in our backyard, their luminescence echoing the brilliance above. That sun taught me hope, of potential and promise, that each dawn was a chance to begin anew. I recall summers spent swimming in a lake at dusk, the water dissolving in twilight as clouds blushed pink and gold. Birds darted overhead, their wings catching fierce illumination before vanishing into the drift of cotton clouds. I recall laughter echoing at family picnics, children chasing kites whose tails danced like ribbons against a sky that felt infinite. In those moments, the world was whole, boundless, as if every horizon held a dream. Now, in Frosthaven's frozen silence, I cling to these memories like embers in the void. Although our world may perish, the sun's legacy lives on in our souls, an ember of warmth in ceaseless night. 17. The Silent Metropolis. In the ruins of Manhattan, battered skyscrapers jutted like broken teeth, their glass facades shattered by electromagnetic pulses. Once the epitome of human achievement, the city now lay silent, its avenues choked with snow and debris. Gone were the honking taxis and bustling crowds. In their place, silent steel husks where nature reasserted its dominion. Icy vines sprouted through cracks in concrete, and rodents scurried beneath frozen streetcars. In one abandoned library, tattered pages fluttered in the gusts, their words lost to frost. 18. The Antarctic Chronicle. Within Frosthaven's central archive, a colossal database hummed on a handful of solar-charged servers. Each byte stored fragments of ecological surveys, astronomical logs, and personal diaries. When survivors arrived, they contributed their tales, birth records, genealogical charts, poetry scrawled on napkins, and symphonies captured on battered hard drives. Dr. Elara Nimitz orchestrated volunteers to digitize scrolls by lamplight, using low-power consoles to convert analog texts into digital form. At night, Elara wandered to the observation deck, gazing toward the shimmering polar auroras that danced like phantoms across the horizon. She recalled the first time she witnessed the northern lights as a child, the way the sky seemed alive with emerald fire. Now, the auroras were a harbinger of doom, their wavelengths amplified by the fractured magnetosphere. But despite the terror they represented, Elara felt a strange comfort in their presence. They reminded her that even in the darkest epoch, there remained something wondrous to behold. 19. The Doctor and the Wanderer. On the outskirts of Frosthaven, a wanderer named Marisol stumbled through the blizzard, her clothing ragged and stained with frostbite. She'd a journey from a settlement in Chilean Patagonia, a trek that took months across broken land and treacherous crevasses. Her only possession was a locket containing a lock of hair and a photograph of her siblings. She collapsed at the frozen threshold of Frosthaven's emergency perimeter, her breath like shards of glass. A medic named Jonna found her, cradling her in his arms as he dragged her inside beneath a flurry of ice. "We fight for every minute," he said, injecting her with a serum made from Antarctic moss that displayed antimicrobial properties. "You'll see the sun again, if not here, then somewhere. Carry that hope with you." Marisol opened her eyes, her gaze meeting Elara's. In that moment, a fragile bond formed between the scientist and the wanderer, a vow that they would endure, that no soul would be left to vanish into the silent cold. 20. Ghosts of the Sky. Beyond the confines of Frosthaven, the skies grew ever colder, a dying ember of the atmosphere. In what was once the Kenyan savannah, a mounted drone hovered above barren plains where herds of wildebeest had collapsed, their bodies half buried in permafrost. The scourge of nuclear winter had spread to such latitudes that no habitat remained untouched. In the once lush fields of Serengeti, vultures circled above bloated carcasses, their cries echoing across the twilight horizon. Meteorologists running calculations on analog charts predicted the planetary albedo would rise above 90%. Sunlight bounced off ice sheets and ash clouds, sending reflection back into the void. The world dinned into a steel-grey pall, as if existence had been painted in shades of ash. Every sunrise was a belated memory, every sunset a final lull. Those who could recall the caress of warmth did so in fevered dreams. 21. Last Symphony. In the waning heart of Frosthaven, a violinist named Victor tuned his instrument beneath the pallid glow of a single filament bulb. The notes he coaxed from the strings echoed through ice-carved chamber, resonating like a mourning hymn. He had survived on a fishing boat in the Firth of Clyde when the waters froze solid, trapping the vessel like a tomb. He played for the memories of those he'd lost, his sister whose laughter once danced across concert halls, his daughter whose lullabies still haunted his mind. As the final solar flare approached, Victor stood on the makeshift stage, met by an audience of weary survivors. They gathered in hushed reverence, their breath visible in the frigid air. When he played the last note, a fading elegy that reverberated through the ice, it felt as though time stilled. Even the winds outside seemed to pause, listening. Then, with a crack that split the silence like an asteroid strike, the generators died. For a moment, there was nothing but the hush of eternity. 22. Ephemeral Midnight. The world ended not with a bang, but a silent exhalation. In the hushed corridors of Frosthaven, the surviving few watched the readouts as atmospheric pressure plummeted, as radiation levels soared, and as the ice beneath their feet groaned one final requiem. The vast dome flickered as auxiliary power sputtered out, leaving only the faint glow of emergency beacons. In that fragile twilight, every heartbeat echoed with the understanding that oblivion was no longer distant. It was here, filling every atom with frozen dread. In her final report, Dr. Elara Nimitz wrote, "Our species lit the fuse, and now we watch the fire consume us. Yet in these last breaths, I have witnessed acts of kindness that glow brighter than any star. We came to frost and shadow, but we gave life meaning until the very end. If there is anything to carry forward from our existence, let it be the memory of our compassion." As the last beacon died, Frosthaven sank into darkness, and Earth's final chapter closed. 23. Fleeting Embers. Long after the echoes faded, the crystal remained, a beacon of memory drifting alone in the vast ocean beneath Antarctica's shattered ice. A millennium passed, and seasons cycled without change, a frozen testament to what once was. Microbial life persisted within hidden pockets of geothermal warmth, burrowing beneath the ice in defiance of the void above. Silence reigned, punctuated only by the distant rumble of shifting plates and the whisper of ancient glaciers inching toward oblivion. Yet, across the cosmic shores, a new generation of explorers, descendants of the first delegates drawn by curiosity, arrived. They came with devices that channeled starlight into data streams, translating the crystal's patterns into a language that spoke of triumph and folly. In their eyes, the lost planet was a mirror, reflecting back the fragile line between creation and destruction. They bore witness to humanity's final breath and vowed that their world would tread a different path. In a distant constellation, among swirling nebula coloured by the effulgence of birthing stars, the memory of Earth flickered like a candle in the dark. The story of a world that loved, fought, failed, and ultimately embraced its end became myth and science alike, taught in academies, whispered in marketplaces, and woven into the digital tapestry of galactic lore. And so, amid the infinite expanse, the world's end became a beginning. A lesson etched in light that whispered to all who would listen. In every sunset, there lies the promise of a dawn. In every ending, the seed of a beginning. As long as stories endure, the world never truly dies.